大家好，我是领域科技的 David。那欢迎大家来参加今天的 Microsoft 365身份与权限管理痛点解析的这个活动。好，那在这个活动的这个介绍说明正式的开始之前呢，我想先请各位帮我思考一下一些问题。好，那主要的话就是各位可以帮我想一下，就是在我们企业组织，我们在导入 N365的这个时间越来越长，或者是在上面的服务的使用越来越深入，然后各位也越来越了解 N365的服务怎么样子去做一些应用。那在这种情况底下，其实都会去衍生一些问题。各位可以帮我想想看，就是当我们这些服务使用的越来越多，它其实也代表的就是我们在这个云端环境上面的使用人数可能也越来越大。那这个越来越大的原因，有可能就是因为服务使用越来越深嘛。然后另外一个的话，就是像我们如果说企业组织它的规模有去做一些调整，例如说组织的一些拆分，或者是组织的一些合并，那甚至是我们公司内部的组织改组，或者是营运模式的整个大幅度调整、系统的更新，那其实这些都会让我们在 N365上面的这个服务使用，或者是在 N365上面的这些账号数量的数值越来越大。OK， 那在这种情况底下呢，它其实会在衍生的就是说，我们公司内部的一些专案形式啊，或者是跟外部组织的合作，或者是内部组织的人员的合作上面，它的合作模式通常也会做一些调整。OK， 那在合作模式调整的这种情况底下，它其实也代表的一件事情就是，我们在做合作的时候，各个人员、各个部门的人，他们一定会去做资料的协作。那也代表的就是在资料协作的情况底下，我们资料的这个分享形式可能也会稍微有些不同。OK， 那各位可以知道，在这种情况底下呢，我们通常来说使用 N365的这个环境，我们各位如果是 IT 的这个技术伙伴，各位一定都非常熟悉怎么样子在我们的 Teams 和 SharePoint 上面去创建 Teams 团队，或者是创建 SharePoint site， 甚至是把一些我们组织内部的人员去加到这些 SharePoint site 或者是 Teams 团队，让这些人员可以在那个云端空间里面去做一些档案啊，或者是资料的协作，或者是专案的一些沟通。OK， 我相信这个部分大家一定都很熟悉它的一个操作跟一些应用。但是各位可以想象，随着我们刚才提到的专案形式的一个调整、合作模式的调整，甚至是组织规模里面的人数变得越来越多的情况底下，那在这个时候，如果我们遇到了一个问题，就是人员的流动，或者就是我们公司内部随着组织规模越来越大，那可能会碰到一些稽核的需求，或者是甚至有一些资安事件，也有可能在我们公司不断的发展的这个情况底下会去产生。那这种类型的事情产生的时候，它其实都会造成我们的 IT 的伙伴、技术人员会比较难在一开始马上的去能够对这些异动或者是这些资安事件稽核的要求去做马上的一些反应，或者是马上的一些处理。所以我们今天的这一个 N365的身份权限管理的这个痛点解析，主要就是针对这样的一个情境来跟各位去拆分，在这样的情况底下，我们大概会有的痛点会有哪些？那我们要如何去透过我们的这个 SharePoint 的这个服务、这个工具来去针对这些痛点去做一个解决？OK， 那今天这个是我们今天活动主要要跟各位说明的一个部分。好，那接下来来到我们的这个问题1，那也是回归到我们刚才前面所提到的一个情境。各位可以想象，在组织规模越来越大的情况底下，我们在这个 N365的这个环境里面，其实会有很多不同的人员以及角色。有些人他可能是我们公司内部的人员，那有些人员可能是属于外部来宾的一个角色。那有些人他们可能是以这个顾问或者是合作伙伴的一个形式，他暂时加入到我们的这个 Teams 的团队，或者是 SharePoint site 里面去做一些资料的协作，或者是专案的一些沟通。OK， 那在应对这些不同的人员角色的情况底下，各位可以想象，其实在我们的 Teams 团队或者是 SharePoint site 这些人员他们的权限上面，有可能第一种，如果是内部人员，他就是在一开始Teams 团队创建或 SharePoint site 创建的时候，他就被加入到这个 SharePoint site 或 Teams 团队里面了。那有些人他们可能是临时中途被加进来的顾问，或是外部的合作伙伴，那他可能就会是直接透过某一个资料夹的这个权限分享，直接把那个资料夹分享给他。那又或者是透过群组的方式来去把可能某一批顾问或者是某一批合作伙伴一次就去做大量的一个加入。 OK， 那有些人员的话，尤其是针对顾问或合作伙伴，他们可能是我们公司外部的这个外部来宾。那外部来宾这样的一个角色，他其实就会去透过另一种方式，在 agent 里面去帮他把他的账号以外部来宾的角色去做一个加入。OK， 那在这么多的人员以及这种角色情况的这个底下，那我们要怎么样让我们的各位 IT 伙伴知道现在到底有谁，然后是可以去使用或者是存取我们公司内部的这些资料的，那我们就会需要有一个工具能够马上的去做一个了解。OK， 接下来我们会邀请 SharePoint 的资深技术顾问 Paco 来为我们介绍这一个工具。
Hi, thanks David for having me, and thank you for the 01 team. It's a great question, and SharePoint is focusing on bringing a platform to customers and MSPs, IT partners, to facilitate data security, data governance, and data management across Microsoft 365. And so let me share my screen and walk you through how we can manage users, especially external users, and their access within Microsoft 365 using the SharePoint platform. So what you're seeing here shared is a report that can be generated by the SharePoint Confidence platform. It will help me understand as an IT administrator, what are the things that I need to focus on, potential issues in my environment, and also how I can drive adoption and improve the ROI of my potential Microsoft license investments or AI investments. Specifically, if I wanted to know who has access and whether there are external users that can access data within my environment, you can see that this is actually one of the components within this report. I could see that, for example, in my environment, I've got 3 SharePoint sites which have guest user access enabled, and guest users are having access to data within those SharePoint sites. This platform does not only report on SharePoint, it goes and reports on all kinds of workspaces that customers might be working in, things like Teams, OneDrive, M365 groups, and more. If I wanted to specifically understand not only which SharePoint sites have guest users, but what are those guest users doing, and is there anything risky, I can directly navigate to the data security posture management. In here, I can get information beyond high level who has access, but instead I can go deeper. I can understand exactly how many external users I have. Did I have any increase in external users over the last few days? And are there any sensitive information within my Microsoft tenant that potentially is accessible and exposed to external people and staff? I could see, for example, there is 4 sensitive documents that are exposed on the public internet and could be viewed and opened by potentially anyone. So that is a risk vector that I, as an IT administrator or a risk and compliance officer, might want to look into. I can directly click into this particular report, and I'd be navigating into this UI here, where I can identify who those guest users and external users are. Not only can I see who they are and where they're coming from, potentially their domain, but I can also see whether they have been active. What is the last time they have signed in? And more than that, what are their activities? Have they downloaded anything? Have they shared anything? I can also see exactly what each guest user and external user has access to. I can get a full access report. And from here, I could also potentially remove any membership if that's required. Beyond external users, the platform also helps to monitor internal users. So if I wanted to know, are there internal users that potentially expose a risk to my organization, I could view that in here as well. For instance, the platform can show you, are you having any orphaned users? These are users that are not in Entra ID, but they have access to data within M365 or are still visible in the memberships of SharePoint online sites? Are there any ghost guest users? These are users that are registered in Entra ID, but they're not given any access within M365. These are all problems, potential problems that now me as an IT administrator, I can quickly view that and I can take an action if I identify that there is a risky user or a user that has improper access, then that is something that I can directly manage and change from here.
好，谢谢 Paco 的回复。那接下来我们第二个问题的话，其实是在我们的一些专案或会议过程中，其实很多 IT 的这个伙伴会跟我们反映，就是如果公司内部有一些人员流动，那或者是这些人员他可能是已经离职了，或准备要离职，那或者是他要去做内部部门的这个调遣，他可能这个人员要从 A 部门然后转移到 B 部门。那其实，在这种情况底下的时候，我们也会有一些权限，需要马上在他这个部门的移转或者是离职的时候，要很快的去把这个权限去做一个收回的一个动作。OK， 那这个部分的话，要怎么样子透过我们 SharePoint 这个工具来做一个解决，或者是做一个这个操作呢？那我们就是再请 SharePoint 的 Paco 来为我们做一个说明。
Yeah, thank you, David. That's a great question. In an organization, there is constantly change that is happening. People leaving the organization, new people joining the organization, and also people changing roles within an organization. And there's multiple ways that as an administrator, I could manage and govern that. One way that I just showed you earlier is I could, using the platform, see all the changes that are happening. I could view all of my potential teams and SharePoint sites and OneDrive workspaces and make changes directly from here. I could change the owner and membership at an admin level so that I can remove people who should no longer have access directly from here without having to navigate to each team's or each SharePoint site individually or having to navigate between different admin portals. I could do that directly from here. Alternatively, if you have a big organization, it might not be feasible for one or multiple admins to do this manually. In that case, I could also think about putting in a policy. So our platform provides you with rules. These are automated policies that will act based on a schedule and based on your definition. So I could, for example, create a policy that restricts who can be added to a certain site. So if, for example, a sales representative is added into an HR-related SharePoint site, this access would automatically be reverted by our platform. And I, as an administrator, I don't need to manually go and fix that issue or remove access by myself. The good thing about this platform and what you can see here is that the platform will directly make recommendations on what policies might be good so that I, as an IT administrator, can save time. Another way that I can manage the permissions change in an organization is by delegating this process directly to end users. For many organizations that have a lot of different business units, departments, and regions, and a large number of users, it is very difficult to make a clear-cut policy or distinction of who should be able to be added and not. Sometimes the best way to move forward is to provide the end user directly with an easy way to manage the permissions. And for that purpose, the Confidence platform, the SharePoint platform, can also be directly integrated in Microsoft Teams. So now let's take a look from the end user perspective. As an end user, I might not be the IT admin. I'm not a technical person, but I can get an email notification and I can directly within Microsoft Teams get a task assigned to me. I can directly click on a task, and in this case, I'm getting a task based on the HR team because I am the HR member within an organization, and so I have the capability to review the membership and permissions within the HR SharePoint site. So I can directly click on Renew and take on this task of updating any memberships. So in this case, I could start the renewal and I could see, first of all, who are the current members of this particular SharePoint site. I've got an owner and I've got a member. And in this particular case, it's not only a SharePoint site, it's actually a Microsoft group. So I can see for this particular Microsoft group, I've got one owner, one member. If I have new joiners that I need to add in, or I need to give access to other people intentionally, I could do that directly from here. So again, now I don't need to, as a user, go to each team one by one and add it in there. Instead, on a monthly basis, I can get a task. I can just go here and update the permissions. I can also make a decision if, for example, this person has changed department, is no longer part of HR, I could remove this user. Or in an alternative case where a user left, a previous owner left, I could also turn this member into an owner and promote that user so that I ensure that the membership of this group is kept up to date. Not only can I manage the membership, but also as a power user, I can be notified if there is any risk within my HR team. I will see if there is any documents, folders, or objects within this HR team that are potentially overshared. In this case, you can see there is an Excel file that has salary information inside, but at the same time, it is highly exposed. It has been shared maybe accidentally by a team member with the everyone group, which is definitely a risk. Now, if I want to, I can directly from here view the permissions to understand more. I can see exactly where this everyone group has been added to. In this case, the everyone group has been added to the SharePoint site as a member, and I can directly from here remove this permission. Alternatively, in the AvePoint platform, we already built in a recommendation, which is to remove all additional permission except the group owners and members. So if I wanted to directly automatically remove any of the incorrect permission, I could just click on Do It For Me, and the AvePoint platform would remove any incorrect, unique permissions. On top of that, I also am able to see any links that are generated. The good thing in SharePoint is, as a user, I can easily share, but the risk of that is that sensitive items can also easily be overshared. And links are one of the ways that sensitive information can be overshared. And so as a user, I can also see for my particular team, what are the items that have been shared potentially with specific users, external users, organizationally, and also exposed to the public internet. Now, as a user, what I can do, if I can see there's a link that is shared with everyone or everyone internally, I could choose to remove those links to lock down my data and ensure that there's no data leakage. So these are the two ways or three ways that the AvePoint platform helps an organization to keep membership and permissions within the Microsoft environment up to date.
好，那也是谢谢 Paco 的一个分享。那接下来第三个问题呢，那其实是我们的 IT 伙伴很常跟我们反映说，有些主管或者是一些法遵，他们会有一些需求是想要针对某特定的人员，或者是某个特定的这个资料，去调阅他的一些稽核记录。那如何快速的去把这些人员或者是这些资料的这个稽核记录快速的去做一个调阅呢？其实，在过去的 N365服务里面，通常来讲，你可能要去在不同的平台或不同的界面底下，才可以去把相关的这种 audit log 去把它调阅出来。那这个相对来说是会比较花时间的。所以现在我们要再请 Paco 来为我们介绍如何透过 AvePoint 这个工具，快速的去把这些相关的这个稽核记录去马上的去调阅出来。
That's a great question. And it's very relevant for many organizations that we have worked with. In many cases, there is external auditors, or for internal e-discovery reasons, we need to know exactly what happened and when did it happen. And it's not very easy to identify this information natively. Oftentimes, if I'm an administrator, I would have to use PowerShell to identify who has access to a certain folder or certain items within a site. I would then have to use Microsoft Purview to identify the audit log. And then I'd have to combine these two information and reports to get my final answer, which is very time-consuming and troublesome. To help organizations to have a quick audit report, which is complete and I can use to get all the information for compliance that I require, we built a quick search and search profile capability directly into the platform, where now I could look either for a particular user identity or group identity. For example, I could look, what does Emily have access to within Microsoft 365, and what would be her audit log? So again, here we are using the Microsoft Graph API in the backend. So I could just type in a name or the ID of a user group, and it would look through the entire tenant, identify what are the specific guest users and internal users. I can directly select one of those users, and I could see exactly, is that user part of any group? Is there any membership? Is there any known risk for that particular person? Maybe that user has access to sensitive information, but this particular user is an external user. Again, directly from here, I can remove access and manage that. But I could also do more. I could also directly from here view the activities and audit trail of that user. So if I wanted to know, did that user maybe download anything or share anything sensitive with external people? Did they label anything or change the label on anything? I could see exactly if that happened, when it happened, and what this particular user did and which machine and IP address they did that from. I could also export this information if I wanted to have this in Excel format. Most of the time, when third-party auditors want to collect audit information, it is not just for a specific person or a specific site, but instead it would be for the whole tenant. It might also be for AI agents. That is something that we see more and more now that you can easily build autonomous agents in, for example, Copilot Studio, and they have their own ID and they can access data with an M365. I might also want to know exactly what does this agent have access to and what were the audits of this agent. I could also do this on a schedule. So if I wanted to have, for instance, a monthly report where I can see for a specific site or a collection of sites, what is the audit and also the permissions, and is there any risk, I could create a profile. And I could say, for example, the monthly HR report. And I could say, I want to have a report not based on users, but specifically on all the HR OneDrives, all the HR sites and teams. I could then specify, I want to have these HR-related sites. I could do that by manually keying in the URL of these sites, or I can select containers and I can directly group sites in that way. I could then configure the schedule. This could be, for example, once a week. And I can even put in an email notification. Once I do that, the respective administrator or user that I have configured will get an email notification, and they will be able to see a report similar to this, where they have full information of overview. If you look into the overview, I can not only see what the site name is, but I can also see all the information that we looked at earlier. Shadow users, ghost guest users. Do I have any risk within that site? Do I have an owner? Is there any primary contact that can renew the site using MyHub in Microsoft Teams? What does the membership look like? Who is the owner? Who are the current members? So I can see the permissions on a high level. If I want to drill down into the detailed permissions, perhaps there is unique permissions because a user accidentally created a link or broke the inheritance, then I could see that in here. For instance, what you saw earlier by the Microsoft Teams interface, I can see that here directly listed as well. I can see that those two files have a link that was created. In one case, it's an anonymous link. In the other case, it's an organizational link. Both represent a risk because they're referring to something that is highly sensitive, and it's shared, in this case, on the public internet or internally. I could even see exactly who it has been shared with. In this case, it's been shared with the owner, and it also has been accessed by this particular user. And in this case, the user is not part of HR. So this could, for me, I could use that to now check the compliance of the site and fix it and remove access if needed to. I can also view the full audit trail in this particular site. So I will get a breakdown of the activity time, the user, object ID, and what was the change that was done. And in this way, I, as an administrator, can easily work with third-party auditors or internal auditors to provide them the necessary information, and I could even automate that using the AvePoint platform.
好，那谢谢 Paco 今天的分享，也谢谢各位参与今天的 N365身份权限管理的活动。那我们的问卷还有 QR code 在我们的影片下方，再请各位帮我们扫描填写。好，那今天的活动就到这边，谢谢大家。
Thank you, David, and thanks to the 01 team. I really appreciated being able to share this with the audience today. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.